right road, no pun intended, but you really do provide a great service. So I just wanted to publicly thank you for all you do at IDOT and for the professional manner in which you run that office down there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. I just try to do what's right.
Okay, moving to item 6 then is the Unified Work Program. Lenny Cantata, are Lenny, are you here?
I sure am. How are you? In front of you, you'll see the proposal for FY 2022. For the planning liaisons, we have our scope of services as well as the overall proposal. The only change to the scope of services was we added a section for contract administrative and general support. The PL program will be taking kind of a shift in how we conduct business, in the sense that we'll be recording our hours spent on the different core planning activities. So something of a consultant format with regards to that. As far as our overall proposal, over the last 2 months or so, all of the councils have submitted budgets. And I'd also like to thank Emily Dauscher and Troy Simpson from Kane County and from McHenry County for assisting me with all this, as well as all the PLs. This was a little bit new to us as far as the budgeting process. So in years past, even before I started, each of the councils was allocated a set amount of base funding and then population distributed funding. This year, we've shifted to what we're calling an expense-based budgeting metric. So essentially, each of the councils are kind of developing their own budgets on what they need to do to perform the tasks as required in the scope of services. Also, sometime also before I started, so sometime before 2007, there was also some positions that were 50-50 funded as opposed to 80-20. Now we're shifting essentially everything to an 80-20. So overall, our request this year has actually gone down, our total request, but the federal share has gone up by about $50,000 or $60,000. It's about a 4% total federal increase that the PLs are requesting. At this time, over the next month, because UWP proposals, I believe, are due in December, we will be working with the various PLs on tweaking our budgets to make sure we come in under that. And whatever the UWP committee decides to award us, we'll kind of work within that budget. So we're just kind of asking for an overall flexibility and approval of the scope of services in the proposal, Mayor.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for Lenny? Well, thank you for your very good, precise report. Okay, moving to 7, local government network update. Patrick Day.
Mayor Schuelke, this is Terry. We have to have an approval.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. Thank you for calling that to my attention. We need a request for a motion for approval of the Unified Work Program for 2022.
Mr. Chairman, I make that motion. Village of Wadsworth, Ryback.
I'll second. Darch.
Mayor Darch, okay.
All right, we have a motion and second for the approval of the Unified Work Program for 2022. Any further discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
All right, I'll call the roll. President Austin, President Brady, Mayor Clark, President Darch.
Yes.
President DeCipio, President Einhorn, President Gallagher.
Hold
Yes.
on, Mayor Einhorn, did you say yes? Okay, Jared, we'll get him. Go ahead.
President Gallagher,
Yes.
President Hayes,
Yes.
Mayor Holland,
Yes.
President Levin, President Mack, President Nunemaker,
Yes.
Mayor Rockingham,
Aye.
President Ryback,
Yes.
Mayor Schuelke,
Yes.
Mayor Sherwin,
Yes.
President Skillman, President Spandy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamburino, Mayor Van Dusen, President Werner, Mayor Williams.
Mayor Einhorn votes yes too.
Thank you.
Yeah, from what my count is, the motion's approved.
It is. Thank you.
All right. Now moving to 7, the local government network update. Patrick Day.
Hello, thank you, Mayor. I'm Patrick Day, and I'm happy to share an update for you today on the newly established Local Government Network, or LGN, if you're an acronym person. Most or all of you are aware of this initiative and are active participants, but for those less familiar, this May, CMAP launched an all-agency effort called the Local Government Network to strengthen our ongoing communications with local leaders. Consistent with ONTO 2050 goals to promote collaboration with local governments and better understand local priorities, we paired CMAP staff with each of the 284 municipalities in the region and 7 counties. Pairings of staff with municipalities and counties were made based on staff preference and familiarity. For instance, some staff are now serving as liaisons to their hometowns. Others work with the municipality on a project or plan or have long-standing relationships already. And that's just continuing. The local government network allows CMAP and local governments to have direct lines of communication, which we know removes hurdles to communication and is generally just a best practice. So we're formalizing that has worked well in the past, but to have greater coverage. And it allows us to share important resources for emergent issues, priority materials, and to enhance collaboration region-wide. Long-term, the goal of the network is to develop an awareness of local culture and to maintain professional relationships that allow easy two-way communication for regional benefit. So, on to the update. So far, we've completed 4 initiatives since May when this initiative was launched. The program was launched. First was the participation in the regional COVID-19 impact survey. Many of you and your staff filled that out. We achieved even better than expected response rate given a very tight timeline, but given the emergent need and everybody's understanding and that personal reach out, it went very well for the region. Next, we shared the updated community data snapshots, very useful as you're putting together grants or you're doing other strategy and local planning. And as we generated that, we gave it in a personal handoff to communities and saw more eyes on it than typically were. Third, we shared the census undercount policy brief that was created and a social media toolkit to help get that word out. And that also went very well. And finally, and it's currently underway, our 4th initiative is a personal invitation to invite municipal officials and staff to this Thursday's CMAP Talks Shared Services online discussion. It will be held from 10 to 11 a.m. Space is limited, so I encourage you to access registration and to reserve a space if you plan on attending or directing staff to do so. And best practices communities can use to share services and make coordinated investments. Christina Burns, Assistant Village Administrator for Oswego, will be a featured speaker, as well as Jenny Malthus, a Deputy Village Manager for Buffalo Grove. And they'll discuss their experiences in collaborating to save public dollars and improve efficiency of local services, as well as share in a discussion with the attendees on other success stories and lessons learned. This is consistent with ONTO 2050 as partnerships to share or exchange services are made increasingly necessary as communities seek solutions under increasingly constrained revenues. And we hope that you can join us for this important discussion. And if you have any questions on any of our 4 initiatives, I'm ready to answer them now, or you can follow up with me. Thank you.
Any questions of Patrick? Well, thank you, Patrick. I think this is a worthwhile program that is beginning to take foot in the region, and the information that you're putting together is, I think, going to be invaluable to a number of cities when you start to learn how others have tried to do it and success or had issues or whatever. It's great information to share. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, moving then to item number 8 is the principles and strategies for incentive reform, and that's going to be done by Matt Stern. And I would just invite all of us to really pay attention to what's being said here, because we're going to be talking about tax incentive reform in Illinois, and needless to say that that could be quite an interesting topic to most of us that have tax increment financing districts and other forms of ways to try to raise revenue. So, Matt, I'll turn this over to you and let you go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Shelkey. I appreciate that. Yeah, good morning, everyone. So my name is Matthew Stern. I'm a policy analyst here at CMAP. And for the last year, CMAP has been diving back into our study of incentives used by local governments here in the region, most recently to develop a handbook for taxing districts across the region to improve the use of development incentives. And Mayor Shelkey is dead on. This is a hard and complex topic with a lot going on and a lot at stake. And so I appreciate you guys taking the time to hear this presentation and look forward to the discussion afterwards. So like I said, we've been working on producing a guide for local governments. We just published it last month. And so my plan today is to summarize some of our lessons learned and some of the recommendations that we make, and then hear your responses. Next slide, please. CMAP has written about incentive use in the region for many years. This is an issue that is important to us because incentive use is widespread across the CMAP region. And that incentive use comes at a substantial fiscal cost. This is despite research that indicates that incentives are often inefficient or to be frank, just plain ineffective at achieving the goals that they often are implemented to achieve. Stepping back for a minute, when CMAP looks at incentives, we primarily look at four common types, the four most common types in the region. These are sales tax rebates, tax increment financing, property tax abatements, and then Cook County property assessment incentive classification. If you look at these four types of incentives, over 3/4 of municipalities in the 7 counties implement at least one of these incentive programs. You see some dollar figures in the top right corner. Continuing to study and update our analysis of the prevalence of incentive use across the region is something that we're embarking on now, and we hope to produce more materials on that in early 2021. But altogether, we know that incentives cost local governments hundreds of millions of dollars. And so evaluating their efficacy and identifying ways to improve them, we believe is very critical. Next slide. So because of this, ONTO 2050 calls for incentive reform, including stronger standards for accountability and transparency, better alignment of incentives with local and regional goals. The plan asks local governments to establish criteria and policies for incentive use, but ONTO 2050 also tasks CMAP to help local governments do this by providing best practices and models. And that's exactly what we are trying to do with in this product that we just published last month. So before I summarize some of the particular recommendations, I'd like to make two larger sort of contextual points about incentive use. The first is that as we developed this research, we identified what we believe is really a central tension to incentives. On one hand, there's a universe of academic researchers who are for the most part agreed that incentives are at best inefficient tools for community and economic development. And incentives have concerning long-term consequences at the local and regional level. For example, research suggests that most incentives don't actually sway business location or expansion decisions. Even in situations where they do, competition based on incentives can lead to bidding wars that drive tax revenues down for local governments over time. And fighting over where in the region new development will locate often does very little for our overall competitiveness as a region. However, from the position of the individual taxing district, incentives are often incredibly rational. Communities face stiff competition from neighbors, be it neighboring taxing districts or neighboring states. And revenue disbursement formulas often reward this competition, especially over sales tax generating business. And then particularly in our region's disinvested communities, slow growth, high tax burdens, and limited staff capacity can often make incentives one of the only tools in the toolkit. And so that juxtaposition, that is one of the central challenges that we grappled with in this study. Next slide. The second larger point that I want to make has to do with, has to do with incentives and the complicated relationship between incentives and inclusive growth and racial and economic equity. The events of the last 6 months, including protests over police killings of Black men and women, as well as the disparate impacts of COVID-19, are important reminders of the systemic inequality that we are all hopefully working to dismantle. And this includes in our community and economic development work. In some situations, incentives can be a part of this process. They can promote equity. They can artificially level tax rates across jurisdictions. They can decrease perceived or actual development risks in certain areas. And in these ways, they can promote investment in disinvested areas. Incentive negotiations can also be used to set expectations or requirements of businesses about who they hire and how much they pay, how much training they provide, et cetera. There's another side of this coin, though, which is that incentives also have real costs and opportunity costs that can end up having the opposite effect. Incentives reduce tax revenues that would otherwise be available to fund robust public services. Marginalized communities may not be the ones who actually benefit from new development. And of course, it's always important to consider negative externalities of incentivized development, such as who's impacted most by increased levels of pollution or truck traffic, things like that. And so incentive policies and any given incentive negotiation process need to be approached very intentionally if racial and economic equity are some of the goals that are a part of that process. Next slide. So it was, perfect, thank you. It was with these sorts of complexities in mind that we set out to write this guide, and the format that we settled on was a guide or a handbook, something that we hope will serve as a ready resource for communities and community and economic development professionals who work for taxing districts and work with taxing districts around the region. Next slide. The guide starts by touching on a working definition for incentives, as well as some basic data about their prevalence in the region. We summarize some of the clearest pitfalls to incentive use, some of which I've already talked about in this presentation. And then we really spend the bulk of the guide laying out overarching principles and then 10 recommended evidence-based strategies for making sure that incentives are doing the most good possible. Each strategy contains specific implementable practices. There are 60 of them in all in the guide that we encourage taxing districts in the region to consider adopting. So those 4 key principles that we include are that all incentives or incentive use in general should always be performance driven. They should be used when they're the most effective tool in the toolkit and improved over time. Incentive use should be transparent. Communities should have a good sense of how their local governments are utilizing incentives and to what end. Incentive use should pursue equity. And then incentive use should, where possible, pursue regional growth and regional benefits, in addition to those at the local level. What happened to that slide? I'm sorry about that. So we include 10 strategies in the guide. I can't expect any of you to read this, but a handful of them are using incentives to develop community benefits and advance equity, targeting projects that have the greatest potential for impact, designing incentives to promote high quality employment, and considering non-financial solutions to challenges that prospective businesses may face. Those are a small sample of the 10 that the guide includes. And the next 2 slides go into detail into just 2 of these overall strategies so that you get a sense of what sorts of practices we include. One of the strategies, design incentives to promote high quality employment, includes practices like first source hiring expectations and facilitating connections with job training programs, as well as best practices. These are things that are more contextual and may apply in some situations for some local governments, but not necessarily universally. Things like funding tailored job training programs, mandating career pathway programs, and of course, better support for accommodations for workers with disabilities, and things like this. Next slide. The other goal that I'll go into a little bit of detail on today is the notion of establishing goals and conditions for incentive use in a public and formal way, such as through an incentive policy. The practices that we recommend here involve building consensus about linkages between what a community's development goals are and how that community actually utilizes incentives, aligning incentive use with local plans and regional plans, and making processes more transparent. The benefits of this transparency include the community's understanding of governance choices, but also help businesses better understand the processes that are expected of them and can help them navigate an incentive application. And our best practice here is to take these standard practices and put them together in a formal incentive policy that is published and transparent. Next slide, please. So I'll wrap up there. I really appreciate you taking the time. I encourage you to download the guide. I'll drop this link into the chat as soon as I'm done presenting. So take a look at it, share any feedback you might have with us. Also share this with your councils, with your staff. And I also want to make an offer, which is for the team that has worked on this project, we would be more than happy to talk to you, talk to your councils, more about this work and help talk about how recommendations in this guide can actually be implemented at the local level. So I will, I'll stop there and happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. That was an excellent report. Talk about something that's very topical for many of us on this call, as far as it's in our faces right now about TIF districts and sales tax rebates and all the other stuff that's floating around out there. So this is great to know that we have a resource like you at CMAP that can help give us some guidance on this. Did anybody on the call have any questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
This is probably not going to be a very, I don't know how to preface this, but how many people that were working on this have ever done a deal?
If the staff working on the report, we are a group of policy analysts, unsurprisingly. None of us have worked in this space directly, but we spent a number of months interviewing practitioners on the local government side as well as the private sector side to inform these conversations.
I just worry about the theory overshadowing the practical end of things, because I've done a lot of deals and no two are alike, and it's just everything is different. And I'm guessing if it's everything is different in Crete, it's probably everything is different in other communities too. And I don't know that I subscribe to all your conclusions. So one of the things that really kind of worries me is that recently there was about a 25-page document that was put out by the state legislature that studied TIFs. And it was very obvious, if you read it, that the people that wrote the document have no idea how to use a TIF, what a TIF is about, and the suggestions that they were making about how TIF should be changed are not based in fact, quite frankly. That's my personal opinion. So,
Mayor, I appreciate that comment. one of the challenges in putting this document together was an appreciation that not only is every community different in their approach and their needs to these issues, but that frankly, as you mentioned, every single deal is different and the context of every deal is different. And so producing implementable recommendations or strategies that apply across the region, across different categories of deals, across different deal structures was a challenge. And I hope that we lived up to that challenge, at least to some extent. And I would certainly invite specific feedback that you have about the conclusions that we draw here in this forum or privately. We'd be happy to discuss them more. We certainly believe that the recommendations in the guide are broadly applicable, but understand that every single one may not be applicable in every single situation. And we do focus, the majority of the guide is focused on strategies as opposed to on that context and theory. But yes, I
read this.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I say I plan on downloading this and reading it because I'm interested to see what what's in it. But I just think any kind of suggestions have to be tempered with reality, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And our goal here was to try to bridge the communication divide between practitioners like yourself and the world of academic study on this issue. And I'll be curious to know once you've had a chance to take a look whether you think we succeeded in doing that.
Any other questions? I would certainly pick up on what Mayor Einhorn has just suggested, and some of us should download this and read this in totality, because I think just on this call, knowing most of you and what towns you're from, there is a wide variance of situations that these cities and villages have to deal with. And I believe the number in the Chicagoland area that we're covering is like 284 cities and villages in the CMAP region. And as a result of that, I visited each and every one of them at some point in the last 30, 40 years. And there is a wide variance of situations occurring throughout those communities. So none of us are the same, and there is great variance on things that we have and don't have. And I think it speaks well to have some professional academic study done on this, if nothing else, to kind of bring that point out and let the region know that some of us may need more direction or help than others, and others may have some great ideas that nobody has ever thought of yet that should be shared. And so I think the more history we can write on this, and the production of it out into the region is nothing but beneficial to everybody involved. And hopefully even future generations may want to look at this and see what's going on. It's like the COVID crisis right now. I'm led to believe that there's some efforts being made to write some histories about what really happened here on kind of a moment by moment basis, so that, if this happens again in 100 years or whatever, people will be able to go back and see what was the pitfalls and what was the successes. And I think there's some need to point out who failed and who really stepped up and was successful. And sometimes it's a bitter pill for government to buy into that and accept it, but those stories need to be told. And certainly in this subject, and certainly in the COVID, there is a definite need to have some broad research done about what it is that worked and what didn't work. Because I think all of us who are mayors have all been kind of beat to the bow on what people like and don't like, and all the things that are going on and how it was done, and where was the Illinois General Assembly through all this. There's a lot of questions about all this stuff that really needs to be at least publicly recorded, so that there's records of it out there. And I think Matthew and your team are really going to put together some stuff that will be of great value to not only today, but tomorrow and those coming after us. So thank you. All right. Next, we're going to go to 10, which is the legislative discussion update. And Gordon Smith could be with us today. So Anthony Savali is going to do it. Anthony, are you with us?
And Mayor Schuelke, you skipped number 9.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Hold on, Anthony. We're going to go to CMAP outreach and engagement updates by Lindsay Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor Schilke. I will be brief. I just wanted to talk to everybody about our process for engagement during the coronavirus pandemic. So if you can go to the next slide, Jared. Many of us, especially as the spring started to look a little nicer, we're very eager to get out into the community. And when it comes to doing our local technical assistance projects, we know how important, and I'm sure you know, recognize how important it is to have that interaction with community members and see people face to face. But in the middle of a pandemic, as planning is important, our presence in communities is not essential as much as we would like to think otherwise. So we are really making sure that health and safety is our top priority. So this means both the health of our employees, but also the health of the people that we are interacting with. We would not want to hold some public event and bring coronavirus to a community. And even beyond that, some of the considerations that Aaron and Amy brought to our attention include things like if we held an event and somebody who contracted coronavirus from another method had attended it, that person could say, oh, well, I attended a CMAP event and I got coronavirus. So we really want to avoid any possibility of that. So I'll just go to the next slide, talk about what we are focusing on. So we really are putting an emphasis on the online engagement and looking for ways that we can be a little more creative and innovative. We have a team that is setting up sites through a platform called Engagement HQ. We are holding focus group meetings, stakeholder interviews, and our team meetings online, and looking to see as much as we can do through that method and interacting on public forums. We have talked about communities where the in-person engagement is very important, especially if the community does not have much or has low broadband access, and the importance of still being able to reach people if we aren't going to put projects on hold. So we asked Amy and Aaron for some direction to how we could proceed and what could be possible, and we have talked about doing some limited engagement through outdoor activities, and these would be very minimal staff, 1, maybe 2 people, and things like a site visit, whether that is walking around the community with a steering committee member, or doing a parcel inventory and recording what the existing conditions are. We've also talked about the possibility of setting up a table at something that is happening. That could be a food delivery program for communities in need. It could be in a community by the post office. We also talked about the possibility of, if there is community service or volunteer opportunities, how we might be able to help do some work that is safe with masks where we are not leading it. So thank you for going to the next one. We want to establish some guidelines for each of these activities. We want to make it clear that no staff would be required to participate in any in-person event. That would be something that they would make a decision for themselves. We are creating a process where we would request permission to conduct an activity and outline what that would be, what type of engagement it is, what the goals of the activity are, and why we can't do it online, and then number of staff and what our safety protocols would be. So the need for any in-person engagement would be weighed for any potential risks, and each activity would be assessed. And we also want to make sure we have a clear process so that the community understands. We want to make sure that we can follow the lead of RTA, the Regional Transportation Authority, who has done a very thorough job of documenting who is working at every point in an activity, whether it's the person who is bagging up the materials to be handed out at the table. All staff would be required to wear face masks and have hand sanitizer. There would be signs requesting mask compliance and not reusing materials. We also would not have staff in the situation where they might have to police anyone who is not wearing a mask. So they would be perfectly free to remove themselves from any situation that they did not feel comfortable in. So those are the general outlines, and I'm sure Amy can also help to answer any questions if there are any. So we just wanted to update you all on how we are continuing to engage communities while we are mostly at home.
Any questions of Lindsay? Well, thank you for a very nice report. Appreciate your work. It's going to be very valuable in the future. Then moving to 10, which is legislative discussion. Anthony Savelli. Anthony?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just here to answer any questions that anybody may have about the General Assembly going into veto and next session.
Anybody got any questions? I guess I've got one. Where's the General Assembly been through the whole COVID thing? Why didn't they meet and renew the governor's executive orders? That's really left myself, I'll only speak for myself, in a real mess out here in Batavia, because I got people screaming at me that we don't have any authority to be closing businesses or making them wear masks. And then other people say, well, the state legislature won't meet because they ran and hid and whatever. What's the word in Springfield about why we don't want to meet about this?
It's difficult to say at this time, Mayor, but we can talk about that further offline.
Okay, I didn't mean to put you on.
I think we should talk about it now.
No, I think the mayor certainly can feel free to fire off if you want to here. I already did, so let me know. I publicly have made statements that I think the Illinois General Assembly has left us cold out in the wind and has taken cover and doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to get near it, doesn't want it brought up in their elections. And I don't even think they wanted to go to Springfield and meet each other for fear one of them would bring COVID down there and give it to each other. So that's my 2 cents. But I think it's a sad moment in the history of the Illinois General Assembly, and I hope it's something that when we write the history about this, their actions are recorded as when the government abandoned itself. You got me on my soapbox. Anybody else want to shoot off here?
Yeah, this is Eric over for DuPage County. I'd like to second that. There's an awful lot of restaurants in this area that are basically showing open and contemptuous defiance of the governor. Mayors such as myself are left utterly powerless because we know, or at least I hope we know, we really don't have any authority to, especially as non-home rule communities, to enforce health-related items because of how this was rolled out. And then, of course, I'm getting all sorts of pings from residents who are outraged that this restaurant isn't closing. Other restaurants are suggesting that it's not fair that they're opening, but we're not. And it puts mayors in an untenable situation where we're under the gun. We don't have any tools to get the job done. And I have to tell you, I'm not sure that I want to be the bad guy and put the village in legal jeopardy to enforce the governor's order. So I completely agree that the legislature should, if they really think the COVID-19 restrictions are thoughtful and useful and protective of public health, they need to step up and provide some additional guidance, at least stand with the governor or offer additional thoughts on how this could be revised. So I'll get off my soapbox. Thanks.
I just don't understand why in the world the state cannot offer up some data that shows that places like the other mayor just mentioned, restaurants and things of that nature, are actually the source of the problem. You know, they got all kinds of other, data and stuff that they talk about, and they tell you that they're doing contact tracing and all kind of things like that, but I have not heard anybody say that they can relate this back to an eating establishment.
This is Eric Spady again. I can actually address that. I contacted one of my DuPage County District 6 representatives, and I asked that exact question. Where are the percentages, or can they do some contact tracing that would demonstrate that restaurants and bars are a hotspot or are generating concerns? I know that the president of the DMNC here in DuPage County has already fired off a letter to the governor challenging some of the why restaurants have been targeted when, according to the data that he has found, they're likely sourced from like 1 or maybe 2% of the COVID cases. And so Sheila Rutledge, my District 6 representative in DuPage, looked at the DuPage County and Public Health and was able to get to me today a summary that did some contact tracing and reports, and what it was entitled Outbreaks by Setting. And restaurants are indeed maybe a couple of % of the total number of incidents for COVID, according to that data set, which I think is current through mid or maybe the later part of October. And so then there are many other types of activities, manufacturing, warehouse, churches that are much, much higher than restaurants. And so what Frank Trilla, the president of the DMMC, asked the obvious question: why are you targeting restaurants when, by comparison, they are a fairly small percentage of COVID cases? And if you really are trying to be effective, why are the activities, businesses, and other locations that are potentially real hot spots being overlooked? So there's some opportunity for thoughtful and criticism, and also some further discussion. Thanks.
Hi, this is Scott Sherwin. The only, COVID aside, the other benefit that we do have of them not meeting is they're not causing us mischief in other areas. So it's a blessing and a curse, but I'm glad they're not able to hamstring us with a lot of other stuff like they usually do.
It just seems to me like it's they put a cast on your arm because your foot's broke.
All right, we're firing off now. Who else wants to make some comment?
Mayor, this is Alice Gallagher. I do agree with everything everyone has said, but I was wondering if the mayor could share that data that he got, or the DuPage mayors and managers received. Is it possible to share that with the rest of us?
Oh, sure. This is Eric Spandy from DuPage County. I'll be happy to share that. The information is from Dennis Brennan of the DuPage County Health Department, and it was solicited by my District 6 representative, Sheila Rutledge. I guess the question then is, to whom at CMAP Council of Mayors should I send this so it can be appropriately distributed? So I'm more than happy to share this information, which I thought was instructive.
Mayor Spandy, this is Terry Dixon. You can send it to me or Jared or to Kama. Any of us can take it.
But could you do me a favor and give me your email address, and I'll go ahead and
I'll shoot it.
fire this off to you right away? Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll send it to you. I will send it to you.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you. I'll get this off to you immediately before I start wandering off on other important business. So thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to make a statement about this whole situation? I know it's on the minds of all of us. I'll just share one tidbit of gossip, I'll call it, that is there. I was contacted the other day by a local, there's these young men and women that run around the area and they make videos. And if they can get to the latest fire or accident or high news thing and they can get the video, then I guess there's a market where they can sell this videotape to the TV news people. And then there's others that want to make tapes for politicians. Maybe something's going on and they can sell it to somebody that's running for state representative or Congress or whatever have you, and show some good or bad thing that's going on. So they're always looking. So interestingly, I get this call the other day from this guy, and he says to me, Jeff, do you know where all the local politicians are having their victory parties a week from today? Are they renting restaurants or lodge halls, or where, do you know where anybody's going to be? And I said, well, I really don't. I haven't heard of any. He says, well, you think about this, the governor came out with this new order that's for 2 weeks, and that includes election night. So how are any of these politicians going to have a party in which they're going to be able to have all their fans and friends there up close and personal and breathing in each other's face while the winner or the loser gives their concession or their victory speech? And I said, well, it's a good question. He says, yeah, there's probably a good market for some people to make some video of that. That could be worth a lot of money in future elections in some instances when you say, do as I say, but not as I do. And so we'll see where this all goes, but I know there are people out waiting to see where the victory parties are going to be next Tuesday night and are going to want to be in there taking pictures of it. So we'll see where that goes. That's going to put a pretty uncomfortable situation in the face of, specifically, I think, the governor's office, that if all these come out and they're showing all these people having these parties on a time when there's not supposed to be anybody in any restaurants or meeting halls or whatever have you, it will be an interesting commentary for somebody to talk about. So I'll just throw that out there for the benefit of the rest of you, because I was the one that got the call about it. All right. I guess we go to 11. Do we have other business? People kind of other businesses seem pretty good today, but do we have any other business? All right. Do we have any public comment? Does the staff, anybody send us any emails or requests to chat or anything? Do we have anything, lady?
No, Mayor Schuelke, I don't see any. Does anybody else who's been monitoring see anything?
Nothing
Yeah,
for the
you're
chair.
gonna get done just in time to catch the train.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Okay, if there are no other public comments, the next Council of Mayors Executive Committee will be in January. The scheduling for all CMAP committee meetings is in process. Upon completion, staff will send the committee schedule for next year's meetings out to us all. And we are anticipating notification in November for this. So if there's no other business before the committee, I am adjourning the meeting, and I look forward to seeing you all in January. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Schuelke. Thank you, everyone.
Stay safe,
Thank you.
everyone.
Stay safe.
Yep, stay safe.
Happy holidays.
All right.
Carrie, Jared, do we need to hop over the Teams or are we good?
We can go on to Teams.
Yeah, let's do that. I'll end this meeting for everyone.
Okay, thank you.